Have you ever wondered why, in the midst of so much uncertainty and difficulty, some people seem to find an invisible strength that keeps them steady? Maybe you've even felt helpless, trying to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, not realizing that there's an endless source of power right within your reach. Yes, I'm talking about God's grace. And no, it's not just a pretty word or some abstract religious concept. Grace is real, it's tangible, and it might just be the key you've been looking for to transform your life. Now, imagine what could happen if you stopped fighting on your own and allowed this grace to surround you, guide you, and most importantly, sustain you. It may seem counterintuitive, but true strength comes from recognizing that my grace is sufficient for you, as the Bible teaches in 2 Corinthians 12:8-9. And what if I told you that this simple truth could completely change how you face your challenges? Stick with me, because what you're about to discover could be the turning point you've been waiting for in your journey. You know those moments when it feels like the world is falling apart? We end up scrambling for a way out, a quick fix, as if everything depended on an immediate answer. But that's where one of life's greatest secrets comes into play: grace. When we read in the Bible, in 2 Corinthians 12:8-9, "My grace is sufficient for you," it serves as a powerful reminder that even when we're at our lowest, God is there sustaining us with a strength that goes beyond our understanding. It's not just about surviving. It's about living with the certainty that God's grace is enough. When life throws us against the wall, it's natural to question how to keep going. Paul, the apostle, went through something like that. He shares in his letter to the Corinthians how he repeatedly asked God to remove a thorn in the flesh. But the response he received was unexpected: "My grace is sufficient for you." This teaches us that sometimes what we need isn't the removal of the problem, but the presence of God's grace to face it. Imagine applying this to your daily life. Rather than searching for miraculous solutions, why not seek that inner strength that faith provides? And how does this play out practically? Think of a day when you felt overwhelmed, whether at work, at home, or anywhere else. Instead of trying to carry that burden alone, why not hand the situation over to God, trusting that His grace will sustain you? This doesn't mean sitting back and doing nothing, but rather shifting your focus from solitary despair to full confidence. A great tip is to set aside a few minutes each day to read the Bible, even if it's just a short passage. Let those words of life renew your mind and spirit, constantly reminding you that God's grace is sufficient to carry you through. And when uncertainty comes knocking, remember, grace isn't just for the tough times. It's for every day of our lives. It's a silent force, always present, shaping our choices, strengthening our faith, and reminding us that, despite the difficulties, we're not alone. God is right there with us. And in His presence, we find the true meaning of "my grace is sufficient for you." So, in the midst of any storm, there's a peace that surpasses all understanding, ready to be discovered in the next step of the journey. So often, we expect to see God only in the big miracles, the radical changes, or in times of extreme need. But what if I told you that His presence is also in the little things of everyday life? That's right. The grace of God, as mentioned in 2 Corinthians 12:8-9, isn't limited to grand events. It shows up in the most ordinary moments, the ones we might easily overlook. When we understand this, we begin to see that "my grace is sufficient for you" applies to every moment of our lives. Think about that warm cup of coffee in the morning, the gentle breeze on your face, or even the smile of a stranger passing by. These are small gestures, simple moments, that we often underestimate, but they carry the mark of God's presence. God doesn't need grandeur to show up. He's in the details, constantly offering His grace, even when we don't realize it. And when you start to recognize this, life takes on a new meaning, as every moment becomes a reminder that God is with you, guiding your steps. What if we started to appreciate these moments more? Instead of waiting for big events, how about being grateful for the everyday miracles? Waking up healthy every day, having food on the table, or even getting through a tough task. These are all signs that God's grace is at work in our lives, even in subtle ways. It's like the old saying goes, God is in the details. And when you start living with that awareness, gratitude becomes a constant, and life, no matter how simple it seems, reveals itself full of meaning. So, next time you're feeling down or overwhelmed, take a look around and try to notice God's grace in the little things. It could be in the sunset, a conversation with a friend, or even in a quiet moment alone. The truth is, God is never far away. He's present in every detail, and it's that constant presence that gives us the strength to keep moving forward, with the certainty that, in any situation, my grace is sufficient for you. And that's how, little by little, we discover the depth of this truth in every aspect of our lives. Often, when we face tough situations, our first instinct is to look for quick and practical solutions. But is that always how we find the right answers? The Bible teaches us, especially in 2 Corinthians 12:8-9, that my grace is sufficient for you. And this applies to our search for wisdom too. Instead of just trying to figure things out on our own, we can lean on God's grace to find true wisdom, the kind that guides us in the right direction, even when everything seems confusing. This wisdom that comes from God isn't just accumulated knowledge, but a deep understanding of life that lets us see beyond appearances. How many times have you faced a tough decision, not knowing what to do? In those moments, instead of acting on impulse, we can turn to God's grace, asking Him to guide us. It doesn't mean that answers will magically appear, but that by connecting with God, we receive a clarity we might not have had on our own. That clarity is true wisdom, which shows up in both small and big decisions. Now, how can we apply this in our daily lives? A good example is the habit of praying before making important decisions, whether they're about work, family, or personal matters. The Bible offers us countless practical pieces of advice, but it's in communion with God that we find the specific guidance for each situation. By trusting in divine grace, we let go of anxiety and open ourselves to wisdom from above. This way, our lives become a reflection of that trust, and the decisions we make align with God's purposes for us. So, if you're unsure about which path to take, remember that God's grace is also an inexhaustible source of wisdom. Don't hesitate to seek that guidance, because it's always available to those who ask in faith. And as you develop this practice, you'll see that my grace is sufficient for you isn't just a nice phrase, but a powerful truth that transforms how you view and live life. The wisdom that comes from God not only guides us but protects us, strengthens us, and enables us to face any challenge with confidence and peace. God's grace is so profound that, often, words can't fully capture its impact. But one thing is certain: when we experience this grace, our lives are never the same. The Bible, in 2 Corinthians 12:8-9, teaches us that my grace is sufficient for you. And this truth has the power to transform every aspect of our existence. No matter how far someone may feel from God, His grace has the power to rescue, restore, and renew, bringing a new perspective on life and purpose. For many, this transformation might start at a specific moment, like an event, a sermon, or even a simple Bible verse that touches the heart deeply. But what really changes a person's life is when that grace is accepted and lived out daily. It's not about a superficial change, but a transformation that goes to the core of one's being. By understanding that my grace is sufficient for you, a person begins to see the world and themselves in a completely different way, with a new hope and a new strength. A practical example of this is how grace can change attitudes and behaviors. Imagine someone who used to be consumed by feelings of anger or resentment. After experiencing God's grace, that person begins to realize it's possible to forgive, love, and move on without carrying the weight of the past. The transformation happens from the inside out, and soon it becomes evident to everyone around. This is the power of grace. It not only comforts us in tough times, but also empowers us to be better, to live according to the values God teaches us. And this transformation doesn't stop with us. It extends to the people we interact with. By living under the influence of grace, we become living examples of God's love, inspiring others to seek the same experience. In this way, grace not only transforms one life, but has the potential to impact many others. When Paul declared that my grace is sufficient for you, he showed us that this truth can change the course of our history. And when we allow this grace to transform us, we experience a life full of purpose and meaning. So, now that you've understood the transformative power of grace, the question remains, how will you apply this knowledge in your life? Are you ready to stop fighting on your own and let God's grace guide you? Think about it. Why keep carrying burdens you don't need to bear? The secret lies in acknowledging that no matter how challenging the moments may be, my grace is sufficient for you. And this isn't just a beautiful phrase. It's a truth that can revolutionize how you live. So, are you going to keep trying to do everything on your own? Or will you trust in the wisdom and peace that grace offers? How about starting today to seek that grace in every detail of your life? After all, God has already given you the most valuable gift. All you have to do is accept it and let it transform your reality. Ready to take your faith journey to the next level? Get your copy of the Yearly Prayer and Reflection Journal today and experience the power of daily prayer, reflection, and spiritual growth. Whether you're seeking a deeper connection with God, looking for guidance, or simply need a source of encouragement, this journal is your perfect companion. Don't wait. Start your transformative journey now and let God's Word shape your life, one day at a time. Click the link in the comments and begin living a more purposeful, faith-filled year. And before you go, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any content that will help you dig even deeper into this topic and keep growing in your faith. Let's walk this journey together.